Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew, and tonight I'd like to welcome author of Esoteric Hollywood, researcher, comedian, and creator of Jay's Analysis, Jay Dyer. How you doing tonight, Jay?
Doing great. How are you?
I am doing excellent. We have got a lot to cover, but it is your first time on the program, so I always like to get started with a little bit about your background. What got you started with your research?
Well, I'll keep it short in that regard. I was a college student studying film and philosophy, and I wanted a way to try to bridge both of those worlds. So I was blogging a lot about films and film analysis, and eventually what happened was it became a blog. The blog got more and more popular. I started incorporating conspiracy stuff because I was noticing a lot of films had conspiratorial elements. And it just coincided perfectly with my academic research. Eventually, I produced a grad thesis that was related to James Bond and real-world espionage operations. And eventually, I got hit up by a publisher. So it was just basically just 8 or 10 years of blogging and just a love of movies and philosophy and comparative religion and all those different subjects is what got it all going.
Very good. Now, for me, I notice nowadays they're not really trying to hide as much the occult symbolism, the themes that they're going towards transhumanism, all these new things that we're starting to see, and a lot of witchcraft, I notice.
Right.
But, it seems like Hollywood and the media has been used as a programming tool to kind of steer humanity since the beginning. Is that something you'd agree with?
Yeah, I talk a lot about how it goes back to the ancient world, to Plato. Plato talks about how you had to censor the arts because the arts were very important for controlling the population. And the elite have always known that. They've known that back to the ancient world. You would have these big, regal pageants and ceremonies. That was to, kind of control the perception of the masses. And it's that same art that the leaders, that the elite utilize even down to today. The only difference is that instead of it being, there still is the mystery school aspect of it, but instead of it primarily being mysteries, in our day, it's much more scientifically precise. So they know from a scientific vantage point how to socially engineer, and a big part of that is the arts, and a huge part of that, and especially in the 20th century, has been Hollywood.
Yes, very interesting. And, would you agree that a lot of the major directors and producers and big players in Hollywood in general have ties to the deep state, basically, military industrial complex, and, they basically in bed together?
It is. So that was the first kind of surprising thing I came across was when you look into a lot of actors and directors and you learn about their histories, and you learn that, they weren't just drafted into the war or something like that. You look at somebody like John Huston he was in the OSS, which is the predecessor to the CIA. You look at the fact that Jimmy Stewart, was involved in all these operations connected to the military, the FBI, probably an FBI informant, and you just start going through the line with all these A-listers. Even under Stalin had a very famous actress in the Soviet Union who was a famous spy underneath him. So this has gone on for a long time. There were German actresses as well that spied for the Germans, for Hitler. So yeah, this is no new thing, but that was the first issue that really struck me. Because I also did a history degree, so you look into all that stuff too with people's backgrounds and histories, and you realize, hey, this is not something that the CIA or the Navy started doing in the 80s. Certainly, Reagan ramped up the presence of the Pentagon and the Navy and propaganda in films. There was a lot of recruitment films that came out, for example, in the 80s, like Iron Eagle or Top Gun. Those are all kind of generic recruitment films. Navy SEALs with Michael Biehn and Charlie Sheen. But it goes way back, and you could even go back, again, you could go to the ancient world probably, but even in Shakespearean times, there were actors at that time that were spies for the monarchy. So this has always gone on, and then you just stumble down this rabbit hole and you realize there's just a whole fascinating world of the convergence of the esoteric, of secret keeping and secret societies, and that blends very well with acting, because people have to put on a front, they have to be actors if they're spies, and the world of theater.
And so I've heard especially producers like James Cameron, Steven Spielberg, especially these really big producers that put out a lot of alien, UFO, transhumanism type films have the deepest ties.
Yeah, James Cameron has for a long time, I would say, pretty clearly. I mean, I don't think there's anything controversial about it. It's pretty public. If you just read his Wikipedia, he's always worked pretty close with deep state, military industrial complex type groups, and there's many reasons for that. I mean, on the one hand, you've got people putting out movies that are going to be blockbusters that they want to have obvious social engineering messages in, because millions of people are going to see it. Potentially even 1 billion or 2 people might see a movie. So there's the propaganda side of it. There's also the psychological warfare side of it, studying how different movies can affect people in different ways, different techniques, different angles. They've even studied down to like a scientific degree, like the perfect way to do a crash sequence or a violent sequence so that it renders in the central nervous system in a certain way. I mean, that's how extreme they've studied this kind of stuff. So there's all that aspect of it, and you can start to see why. Now I see why James Cameron is going to be the guy who's filming, quote unquote, the Mars missions, right? Because why do you need the top Hollywood guy of all time with Titanic and Avatar? Why is he going to film the Mars missions? Well, that's because, again, he's on the board of NASA's Mars project. So that's a clear example there, because NASA, of course, is a complete creation of the deep state. It was created under the aegis of the Air Force and the intelligence networks at that time.
Now, I've heard you talk about culture creation before, and how that's kind of the goal. Can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Well, the same idea again. You can go back to Plato in the Republic, where he talks about censoring the arts, because he knows that culture has to be controlled. There's a dialogue he has called Ion to Socrates, the character in the dialogue. So Plato goes and talks to the musicians and poets, and he says, you guys are basically inspired by creativity, by the muse, by some sort of almost divine force that sort of overtakes you. And he says, you guys, it's so emotion based. He's not saying that the arts are bad. He's just saying that while you guys have a unique way to, create the arts, we can't let you run society, because if we let you run society, then society will be run on the basis of the passions. So we have to tightly control the arts. So that same idea can be reversed, where you say, well, if I can control the arts, I can kind of engineer them or tweak them or weaponize them to where they become a source for social revolution or change. In fact, that was one of the reasons Plato said you had to control the arts, is because they can be used to corrupt the youth, and the youth will go crazy and they'll destroy your civilization, basically. So you have to be leery of that, and that idea is present even in psychological warfare documents, Tavistock documents, big white paper scale documents that talk about the engineering of culture for the purpose of not freeing man, not giving you, more pleasure, not giving you the drugs that you want, or whatever you might think the counterculture revolution is about. The actual purpose of it is bigger scale questions, typically speaking, about where they want to take society, and basically in the realm of like a global government. So it's all about that end goal and using these different techniques to steer society in that way.
Yeah, and we can definitely see where they're trying to steer us now.
Right.
With the especially with the transhumanism thing, and I do also see a lot of witchcraft. There's a lot of occult and witchcraft stuff on Netflix now. A lot of like the remake of Sabrina, which is like extremely dark. I don't know if you've seen that. But
I watched a few episodes just because I wanted to see, because everybody was talking about it, and it's pretty crazy how extreme that went from, the old Melissa, whatever her name is, and the old
right, yeah,
Sabrina from the '90s, Melissa Joan Hart or whatever. How crazier it got from there to now.
that's very interesting. And what do you think is going on with, that they're not really hiding the occult aspect anymore as much as they used to? It's more out in the open. Do you think that they just think that, well, we're steering humanity enough, they're getting acclimated to this, and this is where we want them to go? Is that what you think is going on?
Yeah, the occult aspect of it is one part of the global control structure, and I do agree that it's, if you look at Alice Bailey and those kind of occult writers, they talk about it being revelation of the hierarchy, that there been the externalization of the hierarchy, that you would have a full opening up of what the occult elite wanted to do for the globe, and that fits in, of course, with the technocratic elite. It fits in with the moneyed elite. They're all kind of agreed on the fact that what we have to have, is a tightly regimented technocratic global control structure. And so the occult side of it fits in perfectly with that. This it's another way to catapult people into the ideas of, like you said, transhumanism. So I don't see witchcraft and I mean, basically transhumanism, I see it as just the end goal of all the alchemy. And you'll find the philosopher's stone notion present in most of the Western esoteric traditions, and even in some of the Chinese alchemical traditions from ancient China. You have the same ideas there, and so it's not out of accord with witchcraft just because it's got science and tech and computers involved. It's actually the fulfillment of what we would expect from esotericism or dark initiation, which is the idea of attaining godhood, apotheosis through technology. And that is, again, that's the great work. That's alchemy right there.
Very interesting. Now, and there's a whole nother aspect to the kind of program, and it's the predictive programming. It's kind of amazing some of the things you'll see, like especially in The Simpsons and Family Guy. I mean, The Simpsons has dozens and dozens of examples. What do you think is going on with some of the predictive programming?
I think that I always liken it to the 40s movie Gaslight, George Cukor, because if you watch that movie, you get an insight into the way that it works in principle. So I'm not saying the movie Gaslight is necessarily predictive programming. It's just a great movie that illustrates the principle of how predictive programming works in the sense of gaslighting the public. So you kind of introduce people to ideas way ahead of time, and all that does is kind of rest in the back of the human mind. The human mind kind of doesn't even have to have it, in its immediate purview, because it's been conditioned to it. So maybe you were introduced to the idea of like Minority Report, talked about predictive crime technology, that eventually there would be the technology that would kind of predict when, we think a crime is going to happen here, so we're going to be able to, quote, prevent it. And it gets introduced in through Philip K. Dick or through the Spielberg Minority Report movie, and then 20 years later you're getting the news articles saying, the local police are going to be putting in technology that surveils everything on the internet and tries to predict where the next crime or terror event will happen. So that's the main purpose of predictive programming on a pragmatic level, but there could also be other intentions why people would do predictive programming. It could be for an esoteric an agenda. It could be for priming people for an occult idea, or it could be viewed as an occult action itself, that I'm kind of announcing ahead of time what I'm going to do to prepare you for it. If you've watched the movie, you get this in the movie Wicker Man. If you watch the old, you can watch the Nick Cage one too. It's funny because it's Nick Cage. But if you watch the old Wicker Man, the cop, he is they laugh at the end because they're like, "You're the fool, dude. Like, we've been telling you the whole time that you were the sacrifice." Right. So you have essentially a version of predictive programming there. And I think in the occult way, the elite do a similar type of thing.
What about the ridiculously specific examples of predictive programming, like the one where Trump is going down the escalator and the woman drops the sign, and then we see that actually happen? Stuff like that. What do you think is going on with things like that?
That one I think has been shown to actually be after the event. It was like a Simpsons special that was after that happened. But there's another example from The Simpsons that's equally as powerful, which is a 2000 episode, I think, where Lisa becomes president, and she makes a phone call, which I watched that episode, so I verified it. But she makes a phone call and she talks to former President Trump. So it's it's the year 2000 is when the episode premiered. In the episode, it's in the future, and Lisa becomes president, and she calls former President Trump. So that, that's still a powerful example. And there's plenty more from The Simpsons, but some people have shown that a lot of the writers and creators on The Simpsons have come from Evergreen College, which is a pretty well-known kind of a CIA school, CIA recruiting school. So I think that what happens is that you do get networks of people who, are, if you're familiar with the interviews of Dean Haglund from X-Files, he talks about the fact that the CIA would show up on the set of X-Files and kind of say, "Hey, we'd like you to put this here. We want this in the script here." So I think that's what goes on.
Now, lately in the past few years, we've seen a major rise in superhero movies. They're really popular now. For me, they're some of the most entertaining movies out lately. Do you think, what are some of the other aspects that they're trying to push with these superhero movies, maybe other than transhumanism, because that's a pretty obvious one?
I think they're pushing a whole bunch of different agendas. They're pushing like a feminist agenda. They're pushing an agenda relating to the role of women, and I mean, not just even like feminism, but almost kind of like that the feminine needs to replace the masculine, almost like they're completely. I mean, you do still have male superheroes, but there's been a consistent trend for the last 15 or so years of really trying to give young girls the archetype of being a masculine superhero. So that's a big part of the agenda. Definitely the superhero movies, I think, as you said, they push transhumanism clearly, especially like the last Avengers, with the character of the Vision. He's a almost Christ-like immortal version of a guy who's been resurrected as a complete sort of computer system. If I recall from that installment of the Avengers, there was pretty conscious sort of Christological references and typology going on there, but there's also esoteric concepts in for example, if you saw the last Avengers, not the one with the Vision where they introduced him, but the last one with Thanos basically depopulating the universe. I mean, that one was pretty blatant. Everybody was kind of like, whoa, they really are putting hardcore depopulation narratives into the biggest blockbuster of the summer. And I did a video about it at the time. So yeah, I think you can start to notice pretty much the entire agenda. I mean, I've seen a lot of comic book movies. I haven't seen them all, but you could even look at Doctor Strange. I did a whole show on Doctor Strange with Clyde Lewis, and Doctor Strange has some pretty overt esoteric occult concepts there. As a movie, it was entertaining. It was good. But yeah, you've got a lot of pretty high level sort of ritual magic type ideas in Doctor Strange.
Now, also lately, they've had a lot of major cataclysm, end of the world type scenario.
A good point,
is that trying to send us some type of message about that, you think?
I think the post-apocalypse cataclysm style stuff has been popular for a long time too. It's been gaining popularity, still popular after 15 years. And it kind of gives everybody the idea of almost like, doom and cataclysm, and we're in a dystopia. It's almost inevitable. And, even a lot of the aesthetics that I like if you like retro wave or synthwave music, you know, a big part of the aesthetic of it is dystopia. It's post-apocalyptic dystopia. So there's an aspect of that to which I think is intended to make it inevitable. I mean, I think 1984 is a good book, but I also see it as a potential tool of psychological warfare, because the whole point of the book seems to be that there's no hope. Like, you don't have any, there's no chance of you, you know, opposing this New World Order system, because at the end of the book, it's, you know, Winston's getting the boot on his head for all eternity. So it's almost kind of a nihilistic type of book, but so I think that the cataclysm pattern and meme is intended to kind of make you feel that it's inevitable.
Now, have you done an analysis on Ready Player One yet?
I did a video on that. I thought it was Spielberg's most interesting film in the last several years. Most of his more recent films I didn't care for. I mean, I thought Minority Report was a good film. I liked his version of War of the Worlds. I didn't care for that boring horse movie. But just as a film, I thought Ready Player One was interesting, and it played with a lot of different ideas. You know, played with virtual worlds. It had the idea of Gnosticism, kind of, you know, sort of pretty heavy esoteric concepts. It kind of broke the fourth wall with that whole sequence with The Shining, which I thought was pretty fascinating. So it had a lot of, just as a movie, it had a lot of interesting aspects. And I do think it shows too that, you know, Spielberg is pretty aware of kind of the sort of alchemical esoteric ideas.
And yeah, and it seems like you know, it's also a type of predictive future, you know, type of dystopian future, and we're going to be pretty much plugged in to live our lives and you know, pretty much have a good time. We have to be plugged into this virtual world.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they kind of, it's no longer like a leisure thing or a research thing, which, you know, most people are using the internet even still, I'd say, in our day. But now it's kind of becoming a thing for transactions. It's, you know, all of that. So economy and barter trade is now a huge part of the internet. All of media is moving in that direction in terms of news and all that. So yes, it looks like the majority of our existence is going to be played out in the virtual world. And there's a concept that a lot of the tech elite talk about, or have been talking about for several years now, which is gamification, where everything is essentially gamified, and there's either a virtual version of everything, or everything is in augmented reality. And this gamification idea, I think, is going to be tied into something like the Chinese social credit system, which you even see this weird political candidate, Andrew Yang, his platform is, oh, we need the Chinese social credit system. We need everybody to be on a universal basic income. You've got Zuckerberg, him, all these tech elites pushing for universal basic income. They're also pushing for and talking about the gamification of society. And I see that as really kind of what the technocrats 100 years ago, if you read Bertrand Russell, he talks about how everybody will be more or less in this kind of system where the central grid doles out to you social credits by which you can live. And if you offend the system, you basically get your credits shut off. You can't eat, you can't trade, you can't, you know, go anywhere, you can't travel. So I think that's the big danger in terms of the gamification of everything. And we kind of see that in Ready Player One. You know, that young guy who's the protagonist, he lives in a trailer park. They're all stacked on one another. And all anybody does in the trailer park is just like put these VR headsets on.
Yeah, now I'm glad you mentioned the social credit system in China. It seems with the release of all this new technology under the guise of, faster download speeds, 5G, you know, it's going to be great. We're going to be able to access all this information. But it's really just more of a control, more of getting our information, and just more of being able to possibly, like you said, implement that possible future social credit system. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would say that even though it would seem like, we're in the West, we don't have that system. Really, all of these big tech companies, it's the same type of plan. doesn't matter whether it's China or whether it's, Facebook. I mean, it's all the same type of plan that they intend to more or less homogenize and make global. And I think that that's the big danger, and that really is where they intend to take things. Hopefully it won't happen. But I think the most amazing thing is, again, the fact that the technocrats like Bertrand Russell and H.G. Wells, they said 100 years ago that that's what they would do. And here it is.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to see what's going on with social media right now, especially with the censorship and the silencing of what they would consider, conspiracy sites. They pretty much got rid of anything vaccine related or anti-vaccine related on YouTube. They're
Right.
slowly censoring everything on social media.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that we saw this kind of coming for a long time. We'd done a lot of shows and podcasts where we talked about the way that making everything no longer even about websites, but you putting all of your time and effort into a single platform like Twitter or like Facebook, that what that would do is take out from under you your own material, because they could at any time pull the plug on you. And that was by design. And other things too were by design, like the never-ending scrolling feed, that eternal, infinite feed. That's by design to keep your attention. And the amazing thing was that we talked about this. We figured that this was by design for many years on Boiler Room, the podcast that we do. And then lo and behold, in the last couple of years, all these tech heads, all these tech elite have even come out. Former executives of Facebook, former social media whiz kids have come out saying, yes, sorry, by the way, we fucked up society. Sorry we did this, but it was by design, and we didn't realize it would be this bad.
Yeah, it's terrifying where we're going. Some of the things. It's also fascinating the times we're living in. Now I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about some of the actors here. Now, you hear stories of, MK Ultra, these actors being programmed and then at some point just freaking out and flipping out. There's all kind of stories you hear about this. Do you think there's any truth to any of the, MK Ultra programming for some of these major actors?
I think it's very possible. I don't have definitive proof for any single actor. I think that everybody finds the Britney Spears stuff pretty kind of fairly compelling. I mean, she does seem to kind of dissociate at times, especially in that one. I think it's a Barbara Walters interview. She kind of dissociates and acts really weird. She's known to have dated, these kind of paramilitary vet type guys who might have been involved in that. Dave McGowan has an interesting analysis about the fact that when a lot of the celebs go to these rehab centers, a lot of these rehab centers and doctors, have been connected to the actual MK Ultra type program. So I think it's very plausible. I don't know how extensive it is and how fleshed out it is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if there's like an MK Ultra, like programmer in every state that, I don't know if it works like that. It could be just certain special locales. And at the same time, they are living a pretty party lifestyle with the money and the fame that they have. So they are also, bombing themselves on drugs at the same time. But if you read John Potash's excellent book about drugs as a weapon against us, he makes a good argument, though, about the fact that a lot of the managers and handlers of the stars have even talked about how they were able to control them by being their drug suppliers. And so I would say, yeah, there's a very strong possibility that the agent, the star's agent, the handler, could fill that role, and they could do that, at rehab centers. I think that's very plausible. I don't know if, I don't have any 100% direct proof of that, but I think that is a plausible scenario, because we know that MK Ultra continued on. We know that it was dozens and dozens of projects at dozens of universities. It wasn't shut down when they had the hearings in the 70s or whatever. Half of the boxes of documents were destroyed. So we really don't know the extent of MK Ultra. It's only been over the years that bits and pieces have come out. I think some documents were just recently in the last 6 months declassified about it once again. So there's a lot that we don't know, and there's a lot of areas of possibility. And again, I do think it's plausible. You know, a lot of the Hollywood royalty, the pop star royalty, they come from already established Hollywood royalty families or prominent families that many times are openly into Kabbalah, Satanism, the occult, Masonry, you know, the CIA, all kinds of different groups and fraternities that could potentially have the knowledge of how to program people. Or everybody knows about Hollywood cults. How many famous people have been involved in cults? Well, cults are, you know, basically centers for brainwashing. So yeah, I would say that if somebody was raised in a Hollywood cult, that's another great way for them to have been possibly programmed. Yeah, any of these things are all possible and very likely.
And that brings me to the next thing I wanted to get into is the Satanism, and the possibilities of, you know, selling your soul to the devil. Have you, you know, heard any, you know, reality to this at all?
I guess it depends on how real any specific star takes whatever thing that they might be into. You know, I mean, I think, you know, with Sammy Davis Jr. or Jane Mansfield being in the Church of Satan, I think they might have taken it as seriously as Anton LaVey took it, which is to say maybe halfway serious. I mean, you know, and the Church of Satan doesn't necessarily recognize an actual entity, Satan. But you know, other stars could be involved in other groups. You know, they might be involved in groups that are self-consciously Luciferian. They might be involved in groups that are something like, you know, Crowley's sex cult type of Eyes Wide Shut stuff. And they might see, you know, Thelema or the Crowley route as the means by which they attain their guardian angel or their pact with their angelic being that is essentially, I would say, a satanic pact, you could argue. It kind of depends, yeah, on what route or group or perspective that star has as to how, quote, authentic, I guess you could say, the quote pact with Satan is. But really, and I just did an interview with a guy on this where we were mainly talking about kind of the pact with Satan. I mean, I think really the way it works is that it will kind of test different levels of what you're willing to do. And the more willing you are to be compromised and do kind of more darker, degenerate things, you know, the more under the control of the system you are. And I do think there is a kind of Luciferian or a witch hierarchy that goes on. There are druids that have a hierarchy. You know, there's a Masonic hierarchy. So all these kind of things do exist. And to that extent, yes, there is a kind of a pact, you could say.
And the other dark aspect of it would be the pedophilia, the child sex trafficking, all that going on. And you know, I have high hopes with some of the stuff that's going on, possibly with Trump and the supposed cleanup of the cabal. Who knows if any of that's true? Right. But you know, that's another dark aspect that still, you know, plagues Hollywood, is the pedophilia.
Yeah, I think the Me Too stuff was a big distraction from that coming out, the real stuff coming out, and it turned into just this feminist type stuff. And, you know, there have been so many cases of this coming out now, and not just Hollywood, but, you know, Catholic Church, Savile in the UK, Sandusky at Penn State, you know, even in the Baptist Church, there's been a big hubbub the last few months over scandals coming out there. So yeah, it seems to be kind of pervasive in Western civilization amongst these levels of society, these different strata and spheres. And, you know, again, there's multiple reasons for that. You know, sort of just general toxic culture and degeneracy is part of it. There's an intentional plan to, I think, invert things, to destroy the previous order in order to set up the new order. And one of the ways you can do that is, of course, to mess up the youth. One of the ways to mess up the youth is to have them go through abuse. So yeah, all of these factors are kind of at work, and it's not just Hollywood; it's kind of across the social sphere. And there have been all kinds of cases. The Dutroux affair. That's another one that a lot of people point to, where you have a kind of a pretty clear Luciferian connection to the elites of Belgium, and procuring people for this kind of eyes wide shut type sex trade stuff. And I think that's what Kubrick was getting at. That's why, whatever you think of Kubrick's motives, whether he was a good guy or a bad guy or whatever, that's really the point of Eyes Wide Shut. Is the Lily Sobieski character that's talking to Tom Cruise. She's an underage girl, and if you listen to the DVD, if you have the text on, the DVD text, what's the word I'm looking for? Subtitles. If you have the subtitles on, when she's talking to Tom Cruise, she says, "You'll need an ermine cloak," and that's the cloak for nobility and royalty in Europe. And so that lets us know that she's been to this party. So I think Kubrick is telling us that that's what goes on, and it's very real.
Now, I don't know if you've ever done any research into some of the darker aspects of Disney and Disney films. Mm-hmm. If you did, I don't know if you could just maybe tell us a little bit about any analysis that you've done on that.
Well, specific. I mean, I know a little bit more about like how Disney came to be in the park than I do off the top of my head specific.
I was going to ask you about that too. So if you want to get into that, that'd be great.
Well, basically, it's really kind of simple. I mean, the park was set up with the aid of the CIA. The CIA is who helped Disney get the land. They helped him set it up. And then afterwards, the park has always had a pretty close connection to the Pentagon, to the deep state, to very big corporations like Siemens. And essentially, it's functioned in close connection with the Department of Defense as a way to kind of test run a managed and controlled society. Because what is a theme park but a big controlled society? So Epcot was really intentionally preparing us for the smart city. Epcot is intended to be a smart city. It was called the Community of the Future back when they premiered it, and it was a designed community. And at the same time, Walt himself built a city near there, which I've been to just check it out for research purposes, called Celebration. And Celebration is basically a big fake city. It's kind of the model of what you see in Truman Show. Although technically Truman Show wasn't, I think they filmed maybe 2 scenes in Truman Show in Celebration. The rest of it was filmed in some other place in Florida, like Gulf Breeze or some other kind of planned community like that. But Celebration is a very weird, kind of creepy town. It's got a really weird vibe to it. A lot of the houses half the house is fake. It just has like these weird, the houses in the neighborhoods look like when you're walking through the theme park. It's very bizarre. Very expensive to live there, and they've had some really, really weird events go down in the city of Celebration, which you can Google if you want to read more about that. But the city is it's no longer a Disney-owned city. It's owned by some other private group or something now. But you can see that from the history of Celebration that obviously Walt was kind of working on the idea of how can we design, the perfect community. And that's why Epcot would be useful for, prepping people for their idea of the smart city and your life being run by technology. Oh, it's going to be like the Jetsons. No, it's not. It's going to be a dystopian nightmare. It's not going to be a utopia. But so that's, I think, one of the key aspects of Disney. Disney was one of the first places to premiere biometric scanning to get in the park, scanning your thumbprint. And who knows what else might be going on in terms of the park itself. But there's a really weird film that came out that a few years ago that tried to kind of encapsulate this idea, which was called Escape from Tomorrow. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, no, I haven't. Oh, wait, I believe I have. I don't remember it, though.
Yeah, you should check that out. It's a weird black and white indie movie that's kind of poking fun at Disney, but it touches on a lot of this, and it kind of ends with a sort of a mind control theme. But as for the films themselves, I mean, there's certainly a lot that you could talk about. But being as I don't have kids, I don't really watch a whole lot of Disney movies, so I don't, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you like what the symbolism that's in Lion King or anything like that is. But I do think it's true that there have been situations where they did insert kind of weird subliminal stuff in the Disney film. That has been pretty well documented. Now, whether that was an artist putting that in there just kind of as a joke, or whether it was actually an intentional kind of subliminal psyop, it's hard to say. I don't know if anybody knows for sure, but I would not be surprised if there weren't intentional subliminals in the Disney films for sure.
Yeah, definitely. There's there's all kinds of disturbing stuff you hear and a lot of analysis, but you never know for sure. There's disturbing stuff and all kinds of stuff. Now, getting back to the transhumanism aspect, you were talking about how they're trying to push, feminism and reversal of the sexes.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that, and maybe some of the newer films that are pushing those.
Well, I think Alita, Battle Angel, had this theme in it. Again, another example of a being who's essentially an AI sort of GMO creation, and she's female, of course, and so that's why she's a hero. You go back to Katniss and Hunger Games. She's the feminine archetype that's going to be the new AI here. Lucy, you've got Scarlett Johansson is essentially a giant supercomputer that becomes God. But the thing about that is I don't think that the intention is necessarily actually to raise women and their status or something like that. And it actually goes beyond the genders. The point of it, I believe, is, and other analysts have come to the same conclusion, is actually to get people to where they see not just gender as an interchangeable identity that's like a commodity, but actually to then prepare you for cyborg reality, where you will have interchangeable aspects of your body. And then you'll get the implants and you'll get the chip and you'll get, whatever. You'll get the bionic eye, which lets you hook to the internet in your eye, anything like that. And what that's going to do is prepare people for the next phase. So the gender stuff is actually about preparing people for the next phase, which is cyborg rights. When we're going to start having to deal with, I'm not a human. I don't identify as human anymore. I identify as cyborg. I identify as bots. Look, I'm already, like Darth Vader, I'm like 50% bot already, so I don't identify as human. And so then we're going to have a whole new civil rights bunch of stuff about them. And then it'll be, the full-on AI and their quote rights, as opposed to, the cyborgs. The cyborg, so it's really ultimately a war on what it is to be human, and to replace the human with the sort of synthetic, silicon-based life form that's to come. So in their mind, I don't know that that's necessarily going to come. I don't think there's necessarily going to be silicon-based life forms, but I'm just saying, in the minds of the transhumanists, that's kind of what they see coming, and we're having to go through this the gender stuff to prepare us for the transhumanist stuff.
And we're seeing this already, but we're seeing it on extreme levels. We're seeing people that think it's okay to be a dog or
right,
inanimate object, or just any kind of craziness that they can think of. They want to get rights to be this ridiculous thing. And now,
yeah, and the weird part is that the giving of rights to all those weird things is actually an attempt to take away the rights that the actual human already has. That's the point of it.
Definitely. And now we're seeing the integration of actual sex robots into society. Right.
Blade Runner, there you go. So this isn't, there were sex bots in other movies, sure, prior to Blade Runner, but in Blade Runner 1982, it plays a seminal role in the plot of Blade Runner. And I think that, we were being introduced to that idea then. there were other films, obviously, throughout. Enemy of the State. I think you get something. There's something to do with virtual sex in Enemy of the State. I think it comes up in Minority Report. If you watch Demolition Man,
where the guy falls in love with the artificial intelligence.
Yes, right. So this is they've been introducing that theme. In other words, more and more and more. He played a big role in AI, Spielberg's AI, with the Jude Law character. And so, yes, that was prepping us for the introduction of the sex bot. And the whole purpose of the sex bot, by the way, did you know that Anton LaVey was a big fan of sex bots? And he said that would be the next revolution, is the sex bot.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting. So I don't doubt that was by design. It absolutely was by design. And that's been in the works for a long time. And that's basically to just make sure that nobody has offspring.
Now, I know you don't do politics, but I like to ask a lot of my guests, what do you think about Trump? Is he on our side? Is he on his side? Is he on the side of the cabal? What is your opinion on what he's doing and what's going on with him?
I'm going back and forth. Initially, I thought no way, and then he was saying so many kind of conspiratorial things in the campaign. I was like, how could they ever let this guy say this stuff if he wasn't legit? I mean, he's talking about vaccines and talking about essentially the establishment created ISIS and all this kind of real stuff, real conspiracy stuff. So I thought, well, maybe he's just like, kind of doesn't give a crap and he's just going to go for it. And then you had kind of all the big establishment entities like the CFR and all that stuff. They were going crazy and writing stuff against him. So it just seemed like, well, if the CFR is coming out against him, then there's got to be something good going on here. And then, none of the campaign promises, not that I expected him to, literally do all the campaign promises, but it kind of became clear, he just appoints all these neocons. This is not really going anywhere. So I kind of feel like, well, he might represent a faction of the power structure. And I kind of think maybe he's got such an ego that like, maybe he literally thought, like, I could go in there and fix this thing. Like, I'm that badass. You know what I mean? That's conceivable to me that that's the psyche of Trump, is that he thinks that he literally could have changed things if he wanted to. And then maybe he got in there and realized how this actually doesn't work like this, like, being a CEO of a company, like you don't have the power to do all the stuff that you thought, and you're actually at the behest of the deep state and all this stuff. So maybe he got an actual, wake up call. I don't know. But regardless, it's obviously kind of become kind of absurdist. And I've never ever, I just get less and less interested in politics as time goes by.
So where do you think we're going, let's say in the next 5 years, with social media, censorship, with media in general, with movies and the programming that they're going to be doing, and society as a whole? Just for the next few minutes, just kind of tell us, where do you think we're going with all that?
Looks like everything's going to be merging into one, like the streaming sites and the social media and all that. I don't know if that's going to be the next 5 years, but they want to merge, Amazon Prime, Netflix. These are kind of taking the place of the Hollywood system. The Hollywood system's kind of going away. It's these big tech companies that are going to be dominating the entertainment. The CEO of Netflix, in fact, I think last year was talking about what the future of Netflix in the next 5 or 10 years is. This was the craziest thing I've ever heard. And who knows if this will come to fruition, but it also reminded me of Minority Report, because if you remember in Minority Report, when Tom Cruise goes home after his day of being time cop or whatever, he takes some kind of drug, and then he engages in his entertainment system, which is like a 3D hologram of his past life with his wife or whatever, who's dead. And the CEO of Netflix was saying that the future of Netflix and entertainment is going to be some kind of nootropic, weird kind of drug that you take. You're going to take a pill, and it's going to enhance your experience in whatever Netflix is going to morph into. Because if you notice what they did with Black Mirror, Bandersnatch, they made it to where they wanted you to be engaged in this, choose your own adventure. So their idea is just out there, but it's literal like sci-fi dystopia world where you're gonna be taking some kind of drug and playing some kind of like interactive thing on Netflix, and probably your other friends on social media will join in. I mean, that's where they want to go, but I don't know how. They keep trying to introduce VR. The main, I think, hang up for that is that people get sick. Like you get seasick from. I haven't done VR, but this is what everybody says about it, and they talk about that being kind of the major hurdle to overcome is people getting seasick. But yeah, so that's where they want to take it. And if you notice, the Zuckerberg was directly involved in a lot of this VR stuff that he's been trying to roll out. So it's kind of a race to see who can get the Ready Player One situation out there.
What about the censorship? Do you think that in the next few years we'll even have an outlet to talk about this stuff? How much longer do you think we have? It's ramping up pretty quick. I mean,
it is. Yeah, I mean, and they're moving fast. They're picking more and more topics. The problem is though, when you start censoring those topics, is that it's over time. I'm not a tech dude, but I'm told by tech dudes the problem is that the algorithm to run any of the big tech sites gets so complicated that it starts to break down, because you've got every time you have to introduce something new for the AI to censor, it gets more and more complex and bogged down. That's what I'm told, at least. So, who knows how that's going to work, if it's going to really work like they think. But the good news, I guess, is that, if they go too far, the whole thing could just break down. I mean, if masses of people get censored, I mean, they're just going to create their own economies. They're going to go elsewhere to either another website or another platform, or they'll just start trading amongst themselves.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see where we're going in the future. Like I said, we live in very fascinating times. I never thought that we would be where we're at.
Right.
Seeing all the movies that I grew up with, it's like we're living in those movies.
It is. It's total dystopia, right?
It's crazy. Now, for the last couple minutes, if you'd like, just tell us anything that you have interesting coming up, and plug your site and anything like that.
Well, we have a TV show in the works, so hopefully it's going to be picked up and sold. So look for that in the next few months. If it gets bought, it'll be another full production TV show, different than my previous TV show, Hollywood Decoded, which you can watch at Gaia TV. But it'll be a bigger scale thing. It's me and 3 other alt media people that you might know. So hopefully look for that if it gets bought. Also, you can buy my books. I have Esoteric Hollywood 1 and 2. Highly rated, very popular books. You can get those signed copies at my website at the shop. Don't get it from Amazon, because Amazon kind of undercuts authors. So if you would get it from me, if you're interested in the book, they're both about 350 pages, a lot of footnotes, well cited, well sourced, and also readable. So it's not boring academic, but it's also not academic. It's also readable and fun. There's a lot of goofy stuff in there too about movies. And then I have a subscription at my site where people can access the archives and all the interviews and talks that I've done. And then you can also follow me on my YouTube channel, which has grown quite a bit. So I tend to promote that. So jaysanalysis.com, and then my YouTube channel.
Very good, Jay. I want to thank you again for joining us tonight. That was some very important, very awesome information. We have so much more we could talk about, so I'm going to have you back on.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Very good. Well, you have a great night.
All right, you too.